Shedeur Sanders just erupted in the most explosive and shocking confrontation with an NFL veteran that anyone has witnessed during this entire chaotic pre-draft saga. And according to sources who were present when it happened on Wednesday evening, March 5th, 2026, the veteran who was left completely speechless by Shedeur's tirade was none other than Browns linebacker Myles Garrett, who had reached out to Shedeur privately to express support after Jimmy Haslam's false medical claims, and who apparently said something during that conversation that triggered Shedeur into an absolute meltdown, unlike anything people who know him have ever seen from him before. According to sources with direct knowledge of what was said during this confrontation, which took place via phone call that lasted over 20 minutes, Myles Garrett told Shedeur that he shouldn't take Haslam's comments too personally because everyone in the league knows the Browns are dysfunctional and nobody is going to believe anything Haslam says about anybody, and that Shedeur should just keep his head down and let his agent handle the damage control while focusing on preparing for the draft. But according to sources who heard Shedeur's response either directly or through accounts from people who were with him during the call, Shedeur absolutely exploded at Garrett and essentially told him that he's sick of NFL veterans and established players treating draft prospects like children who should just be grateful for opportunities and who should accept being disrespected and lied about without fighting back. According to sources, Shedeur specifically told Garrett something very close to, "You're telling me to keep my head down and let adults handle this? I'm not a kid anymore. I'm a grown man whose career is being sabotaged by a billionaire owner who's lying about my health to cover his own incompetence. And you want me to just accept that? You want me to just smile and say, thank you while someone tries to destroy everything I've worked for? No, I'm done being quiet. I'm done accepting that this is just how the NFL works. If Haslam wants to lie about me, I'm going to fight back with everything I have. And if that makes me difficult, or if that makes teams not want to draft me, then those teams don't deserve me anyway." And according to sources, Myles Garrett was so taken aback by the intensity and the conviction in Shedeur's voice that he literally didn't respond for over 15 seconds, just sitting in stunned silence before eventually saying something like, "Okay, man, I respect that. Do what you need to do in ending the call." The eruption and the shock it caused is now circulating through NFL circles, with veterans and executives debating whether Shedeur's willingness to fight back against being disrespected represents refreshing courage and maturity, or whether it represents the kind of combative attitude that will make him difficult to coach and manage as a professional. The explosive confrontation between Shedeur Sanders and Myles Garrett that shocked the NFL happened on Wednesday evening, March 5th, 2026, approximately 3 hours after Jimmy Haslam's false medical claims about Shedeur's shoulder had become public and had started spreading through media and social media channels. According to sources familiar with how the interaction came to happen, Myles Garrett had been following the drama surrounding Shedeur and the Browns over the past few days. And after hearing about Haslam's defamatory comments on the radio, Garrett felt compelled to reach out to Shedeur to offer support and to try to provide some veteran perspective on how to handle being publicly attacked by team ownership. The specific method by which Myles Garrett contacted Shedeur Sanders was through a phone call placed directly to Shedeur's cell phone, according to sources who've been briefed on the interaction. According to sources, Garrett and Shedeur had exchanged phone numbers several weeks earlier during one of Shedeur's visits to the Browns facility when Garrett was trying to recruit him to Cleveland by talking up the organization and by offering himself as a mentor if Shedeur ended up being drafted by the Browns. According to sources, that initial relationship between Garrett and Shedeur had been positive and cordial, with both men expressing mutual respect for each other's talent and work ethic. But according to sources, when Garrett called Shedeur on Wednesday evening to offer support after Haslam's comments, The conversation went in a completely different direction than Garrett anticipated. According to sources who've been briefed on how the call started, Garrett opened by telling Shedeur that he'd heard about Haslam's radio interview and that he wanted Shedeur to know that nobody who matters in the NFL takes anything Haslam says seriously, and that teams and scouts know to do their own medical evaluations rather than relying on what owners claim publicly. According to sources, Garrett continued by offering Shedeur what he thought was helpful advice based on his own experience dealing with Brown's dysfunction over the years. According to sources, Garrett told Shedeur something along the lines of, "Look, I've been dealing with this organization's chaos for 7 years now. The way you survive in the NFL when you're in a dysfunctional situation is you keep your head down. You don't engage with the drama. You let your agent and your people handle the public relations stuff. And you just focus on being great at football. Eventually, the football speaks louder than anything else. So my advice to you is don't let Haslam's comments get in your head. Don't give him the satisfaction of responding. Just prepare for the draft. Trust that teams will do proper medical evaluations. And show everyone what you can do on the field." But according to sources who were present with Shedeur when he received this call from Garrett, Shedeur's reaction to what Garrett said was not gratitude or appreciation for the veteran's perspective, but rather immediate and intense anger. According to sources who witnessed Shedeur's side of the conversation, Shedeur's face flushed red, his voice got louder and more aggressive, and he started pacing around the room as he responded to Garrett in ways that clearly caught Garrett off guard based on how the rest of the conversation unfolded. The specific words that Shedeur used during his eruption at Myles Garrett have been recounted by multiple sources who either heard the conversation directly or who were briefed on it immediately afterward. According to these sources, Shedeur's response to Garrett's advice about keeping his head down was something very close to the following. Delivered in an intense and emotional tone, "Myles, I appreciate you reaching out and I respect you as a player and as a person. But I have to tell you that everything you just said is exactly the kind of thinking that allows owners and executives to treat players like property instead of like human beings. You're telling me to keep my head down. You're telling me to let adults handle this. I'm 23 years old. I'm about to be an NFL player. I'm a grown man. And more importantly, I'm someone whose entire career and reputation is being attacked with lies by a man who has more power and more money than I do. And you think the right response to that is to just be quiet and hope it goes away?" According to sources, Shedeur continued without giving Garrett much opportunity to interject. "You know what I've learned over the past few weeks since I cut ties with my father? I've learned that the NFL has been built on this culture of players accepting disrespect and accepting being treated badly because everyone says that's just how the business works. Keep your head down. Don't make waves. Be grateful for the opportunity. Don't question authority. And I'm telling you right now, I'm done with that mindset. I watched my father operate that way my whole life, prioritizing money and access over dignity and principles, and it destroyed him. It destroyed our family. It almost destroyed me. So no, I'm not going to keep my head down while Jimmy Haslam lies about my medical condition to the entire world." According to sources who heard the continuation of Shedeur's tirade, he became even more passionate and direct as he went on. "Do you understand what Haslam did? He didn't just criticize my play or say he doesn't think I'm worth a high draft pick. He lied about my health. He made up a medical condition that doesn't exist to justify his own incompetence. And if I don't fight back against that, if I just let that stand without defending myself, then every team in this league is going to question whether I really have a shoulder problem. Teams are going to require extra medical testing. They're going to downgrade me on their draft boards. They're going to offer me less money in contract negotiations. My entire financial future and my entire career trajectory could be damaged by Haslam's lies. And you think I should just accept that quietly?" According to sources, at this point in the conversation, Myles Garrett tried to interject and to explain that he wasn't suggesting Shedeur should just accept being lied about. but rather that he should let his legal team and his agents handle the response rather than engaging personally and emotionally. But, according to sources, Shedeur cut Garrett off and continued his eruption with even more intensity. I know you're trying to help and I respect that. But what you're really telling me is that I should let other people fight my battles for me. That I should hide behind lawyers and agents while they issue statements and file paperwork. And maybe that works for you. Maybe that's how you've survived being in Cleveland for 7 years. But that's not who I am anymore. I spent 23 years letting my father fight my battles for me and make decisions for me and control my career. And that almost destroyed me. So now that I've finally taken control of my own life and my own career, you want me to immediately give that control to other people again? No. If someone attacks me, I'm going to respond. If someone lies about me, I'm going to call them a liar publicly. If someone tries to sabotage my career, I'm going to fight back with everything I have. And if that makes me difficult, or if that makes teams not want to draft me because they think I'm too outspoken or too willing to challenge authority, Geet, those teams don't deserve me anyway. The 15 seconds of stunned silence from Myles Garrett that followed. Shedeur's eruption has been described by sources who heard it through the phone as palpable and awkward. According to sources, Garrett literally said nothing for an extended period, apparently processing what Shedeur had just said and trying to figure out how to respond to such an intense and unexpected outburst. According to sources, when Garrett finally did speak, his tone was much more subdued and uncertain than it had been at the beginning of the call, as if he was genuinely rattled by Shedeur's passion and conviction. According to sources who heard Garrett's response, he said something like, "Okay, Shedeur, I hear you. I respect what you're saying. I didn't mean to imply you should just accept being disrespected. I was just trying to give you some perspective on how to survive in this league when things get ugly. But you're right that every player has to make their own decisions about how they handle these situations. So if you feel like you need to fight back publicly and aggressively, then do what you need to do. I respect that." According to sources, after making that statement, Garrett made some brief small talk about hoping Shedeur ends up in a good situation, regardless of where he's drafted. And then the call ended relatively quickly with both men seeming uncertain about how to move forward from such an intense conversation. The immediate impact of Shedeur's eruption on Myles Garrett personally has been to make Garrett reconsider some of his own approach to dealing with Brown's dysfunction, according to sources who've spoken with Garrett after the call. According to sources, Garrett has told teammates in confidence that Shedeur's passionate defense of his right to fight back against being disrespected made Garrett reflect on whether his own approach of keeping his head down has actually enabled the Browns to remain dysfunctional, because players with leverage like Garrett have chosen to tolerate the chaos rather than demanding better. According to sources, Garrett has specifically mentioned to people that Shedeur's comment about teams that don't want players who challenge authority don't deserve those players resonated with him and made him wonder whether his own willingness to accept Brown's dysfunction in exchange for individual statistical success and contract money has been the right choice, or whether he should have been more willing to use his platform and his leverage to force organizational change. The circulation of information about Shedeur's eruption through NFL circles happened quickly on Wednesday evening and into Thursday morning as sources who knew about the Garrett-Shedeur conversation shared details with reporters, with other players, and with team executives. According to sources monitoring how the story spread, the reaction within the league has been sharply divided along generational and philosophical lines, with older veterans and executives generally viewing Shedeur's attitude as problematic, while younger players and more progressive-minded coaches viewing it as refreshing and courageous. The veteran NFL players who have expressed criticism of Shedeur's approach in conversations with sources argue that his willingness to publicly fight back against team ownership represents a lack of understanding about how the league works and about the importance of maintaining relationships even with difficult or dysfunctional organizations. According to sources who've heard these criticisms, the argument from veteran players is essentially that Shedeur is too young and too inexperienced to understand that sometimes you have to swallow your pride and accept disrespect as part of the business of professional football, and that burning bridges with powerful people like Jimmy Haslam could hurt Shedeur's career more than Haslam's false comments ever could. But, according to sources, younger NFL players, including several who are active on social media, have been expressing support for Shedeur's willingness to stand up for himself and to refuse to accept the traditional shut up and be grateful mentality that's dominated the league for decades. According to sources monitoring social media, several young NFL players have tweeted or posted messages of support for Shedeur without naming him directly, using phrases like respect two young guys who aren't afraid to demand respect, and the next generation doesn't have to accept the same. Disrespect the older generation accepted. The NFL coaching community's reaction to Shedeur's eruption has been complex and varied according to sources who've spoken with coaches at multiple levels. According to sources, some coaches view Shedeur's attitude as a red flag that suggests he'll be difficult to coach and that he'll question authority and create locker room problems. But according to sources, other coaches, particularly younger, offensive-minded coaches who value confidence and assertiveness in their quarterbacks, view Shedeur's willingness to fight back as evidence of the kind of competitive fire and self-belief that elite quarterbacks need to have. The specific feedback that NFL teams have been giving to Shedeur's representatives since the eruption at Myles Garrett became known has been illuminating about how different organizations view character and attitude according to sources who've been monitoring team communications. According to sources, at least two teams that were previously interested in Shedeur have backed away from him, citing concerns about his combative personality and his unwillingness to accept coaching and guidance from veterans. But according to sources, at least three other teams have actually increased their interest in Shedeur after learning about the Garrett confrontation, viewing it as evidence that Shedeur has genuine passion and conviction and that he won't be a passive player who just accepts whatever situation he's put in. The psychological analysis of why Shedeur responded so intensely to Myles Garrett's well-intentioned advice is important for understanding where Shedeur's head is at during this critical period. According to sources who've worked with Shedeur or who understand his mindset. According to sources, Shedeur is in a phase of his life where he's actively rejecting everything that characterized his upbringing under Deion's control. And part of that rejection involves refusing to accept the traditional power dynamics of the NFL, where young players are expected to defer to veterans and to accept guidance without questioning it. According to sources who've discussed this with Shedeur, he views the keep your head down and let adults handle it advice that Garrett offered is fundamentally the same as the approach his father always took, which was to accept structural problems with systems and institutions as long as you could personally benefit financially or in terms of status. According to sources, Shedeur has decided that he wants to be someone who challenges unjust systems rather than someone who just learns to work within them. And Garrett's advice, however well-intentioned, represented everything Shedeur is trying to move away from. The long-term implications of Shedeur's eruption and his willingness to publicly fight back against perceived injustices could be significant for his NFL career, according to sources who study how player reputations develop and how they affect career trajectories. According to sources, if Shedeur succeeds in the NFL and becomes a productive quarterback, his reputation as someone who stood up for himself during the draft process will be viewed as evidence of strong character and leadership. But according to sources, if Shedeur struggles or fails in the NFL, that same reputation will be reframed as evidence that he was arrogant, immature, and unwilling to listen to people who were trying to help him.